Welcome back to Missing. I am Tim here today with Lance. Lance, how are you today?
I'm doing great today. It's fantastic to be here. It's fantastic to have a return guest bring another missing person to our attention so we can, in turn, bring it to the listener's attention. Speaking of which, I hope everyone out there is doing as good as you and I are doing, Tim. I'm just assuming you're doing well. How are you?
I'm doing well. Yeah, thanks for asking. And yes, so we have a return guest. His name is Jason Watts. He is now a licensed private investigator, as he wasn't several years ago when we had him on, but he has been now for, I think, a couple of years. He has been working on Brandon Lawson's disappearance for years. He was part of the search team, really led the search team that ended up locating Brandon Lawson. He's also worked on several other cases, Samantha Tapp, Jason Landry. I believe he led a search for Alana Turner as well. And now, Lance, he's back looking for a fellow named Morris Ray McDonald. And he is called Ray throughout this conversation. But he went missing on January 28th, 2002. He's 66 years old. He's a white male, about 5'8", 125 pounds, blue eyes, gray hair. Doesn't have any visible tattoos, scars, or markings, but he was last seen wearing a blue heavy coat, dark color Army veteran ball cap, jeans, and sneakers.
And this conversation first stands out as one with very limited information. Jason has dug into it as much as he can up to this point. It's been pretty early on in his investigation, but as far as the disappearance, we're, going on like 3 years with no real progress or evidence or sightings or context even on how and why Ray disappeared. You'll hear it in the conversation. I think oftentimes we say that we have these classic missing episodes where we have a very complete story and a really detailed timeline. This has holes. So I think it's classic in the sense of you have to sort of become your own investigator. You have to help out Jason and say, have you thought about this? Because even though he's a licensed PI, there is definitely things that some people won't see because they're so entrenched in it. We tried to ask questions that maybe he said, I'm not quite sure of that, but it's not because he would say that due to lack of trying. There's just not a lot of info out there on Ray, and it's not a fortunate situation.
Right. And with that said, this interview with Jason puts more new information out into the public about Ray's disappearance than I think any other outlet, at least that I've seen, because Jason has information that I did not find anywhere online. So I'm glad in that sense that we're bringing this information to the public. Hopefully this has some effect. So Ray went missing from Crowley, Texas, and this is near where Jason lives. And his phone last pinged in Mansfield, Texas, which is, I guess, a couple of small towns away. And so we're going to talk about that with Jason in this interview, and we'll also talk about that a little bit in our final thoughts after the interview with Jason Watts.
Okay, great. Yes, you mentioned the final thoughts. So those final thoughts I'm not going to give at the beginning of the episode. By definition, you hear them at the end of the episode. So stay tuned for those, and I just have to hold myself back right now because I really want to talk about this.
Okay, so follow us on social media at Missing CSM. Also want to let you know that this Friday, that is March 21st, we are doing a couple of live shows on the Missing YouTube page. So you can check that out at youtube.com/missingcsm. One is at 10 a.m. Eastern and one is at 1:30 p.m. Eastern. That one is about art crime, one of our other shows, Empty Frames. So check that out. And if you have any information about Ray's disappearance, please call the Crowley, Texas Police Department at 817-297-2276.
All right, we're going to be right back after a commercial break with Jason Watts and the mystery of Morris Ray McDonald.
Welcome back to the podcast, Jason Watts. Jason, how are you today?
Doing good. How are you guys doing?
Yeah, we're doing really good. Thanks for coming on. I always get excited when we introduce you because you come on with so many things to say. Like every time you come on, there's always new information about something that you're doing. You have multiple missing persons that you're looking into. You do searches. But for anybody out there who doesn't know who you are, can you just fill everybody in, give them a little refresher?
I'm Jason Watts. I'm a licensed private investigator and missing persons advocate. I worked on the Brandon Lawson case for years. I'm now assisting in the searches for Jason Landry, and I've started to kind of branch out and take on a couple more cases that are local to me. And that's what we're here to talk about today.
Very good. And we understand that you were recently in the field on a search just this past weekend. Can you tell us a little bit about that search and who you were looking for?
Yeah, so that search was a search for Jason Landry down in Luling. Jason went missing December 13th, 14th, 2020 from Luling, Texas. We've actually, we've done a couple episodes with you guys on him. They were really good episodes, really proud of them. We were on a property that we had been previously unable to access, but the ownership of the property changed, and the new owner was somebody that we had already established a good, relationship with, and he agreed to let us search the new property. And so it was a property that we felt there was a reasonable degree of probability Jason could be on. We searched probably a good 80 to 85% of the property. It was a pretty good sized property. We did not find any evidence of Jason. There's still a little bit of the property we're going to have to go back and finish up. I think we're going to try to do that probably for our April search. We try to go out and search at least once a month. So that's kind of what's been new on that case. We're really focused on areas that have not been searched before.
And do you mind giving us a quick rundown on the circumstances of his disappearance?
Yeah, so like I said, Jason Landry went missing December 13th, 14th, 2020. He left his college apartment in San Marcos, Texas. He was a student at Texas State University in San Marcos. He left that dorm probably, I think it was about 10:54 p.m. at night, began traveling along Highway 80 and got into the city of Luling. He was supposed to make a turn at the main intersection there in Luling, and for whatever reason, he did not. And he ended up on a rural road 5 miles outside of the city, crashed his car, and disappeared off the face of the earth.
Wow. Well, how did you get involved in the disappearance of Morris Ray McDonald?
So Ray went missing from Crowley, Texas, January 28th, 2022. My main job is there in the city of Crowley. So I was going to lunch one day and someone had hung one of Ray's missing persons flyers there in the restaurant. And at the time I was still pretty deep in the Lawson case. So the discovery in that case had just occurred like the week prior. Everything was kind of coming down off that. And I wasn't able to get into it right then and there. But as 2022 progressed, I kept that case in the back of my mind. And then I finally decided, you know what, I want to try to do something with it if I can. And about that time, I became a licensed private investigator. And I decided that I was really this is the first case I'm going to try to kind of, take on just me grabbing a hold of it and taking it without, like the Landry case. It was part of a group that came together. With Ray's, it was just me. It was me. This was the first case I kind of took on solely as a private investigator. So that's how that came about. That's how I got involved.
What is that like? Like when you make that step to say that this is now my case, solely my case as a private investigator?
Well, the first thing I did was contact Ray's sister, Donna. Donna is kind of the main driving force, so to speak, behind Ray's case. Ray does have a wife and son, and they care and they want to help look for Ray, but they're closely associated with him, and things are very hard on them. And so Donna was really the one that was picking up the torch and taking it, so to speak. And the first thing I did was reach out to her and just offer to do what I could. And she accepted my help. And so the next step for me was making contact with the detective in charge of the case at Crowley PD. I made contact with him. He's an awesome detective. That man has been so helpful to me. He has basically said, look, man, I did what I could, and I will work any new information you give me. I want to see the case solved. I just, he's like every other detective. He's got a workload and he can't focus his time solely on one case. I think he was glad somebody was trying to, work it.
Is it easier for you? You said that you focus on cases that are local to you, like right now. Is that like part of the technique? Is because you can relate to someone like that, and they're law enforcement. They're letting you in on all of this as well. And is it because you're local and you just have an easier time like communicating and being relatable?
Well, that's probably part of it. And then, just having the time, to work it. With Landry's case, I have to travel. This case, it's local to me. It's only about 30 minutes from where I live. And then like I said, I work in the same city as Ray went missing from. So I can do things, after I get off work, if I have to go check out this area or go talk to this person or go talk to that person. So that's what makes it really workable for me.
Okay, and can you tell us who Morris Ray McDonald is?
So Ray McDonald was a 66-year-old man living in Crowley, Texas. He lives with his wife and son. He is a former Army veteran. He did have some issues in his life with alcoholism, but he had recently conquered those issues. He had gone down to a treatment center in Florida, and he was a recovering alcoholic. He had been sober for about 2 years at the time of his disappearance. The circumstances surrounding Ray's disappearance are on January 28th, 2022, he got into a disagreement with his son. His son is an adult who is still living with Ray and his wife, and there were some frustrations and tensions there because the son wasn't working. And Ray was really trying to get him to get out, get a job. This is all on me and your mom. Jason McDonald is Ray's son. The son had recently brought a girlfriend and the girlfriend's child in to live in the home. So now you have 4 people in a home, and Ray was retired due to just he's 66. So Ray's wife was the only one that was really still working. So there were some, that starts to bring in some frustrations and some tensions. And what really kicked the argument off was, I believe the girlfriend's child had brought it was either the girlfriend or the girlfriend's child had brought a small kitten into the home, and the kitten actually damaged one of Ray's precious family heirlooms, and Ray was upset about that. And so they argued a little bit, and then they went into separate rooms, which was common for them to do. In a disagreement, they would both go into a different room, kind of cool off. When the son came back out of the room about 1:30, he noticed that the front door was open and Ray was gone. And that was the last time anybody physically saw Ray.
How did you get that info that they would go into separate rooms when they had an argument?
So that information is not only in the police files, it came from Donna as well.
Was the relationship between the family members like tense? Was it always tense?
It could be at times, but there were times where everything was cool. I kind of look at it as sort of like a normal family. There's times of tension, and then there's times of everything's fine. I know Ray was frustrated with the current situation with the son not working, and then him bringing in the girlfriend and the child. I know there was some frustration on Ray's part there. Ray had mentioned that to a couple of his buddies, and Jason McDonald, Ray's son, even admits that there was tensions due to this in the statement that he made to police.
Yeah, that sounds pretty natural, I guess. Was it were they arguing constantly or like daily, or just normal family stuff once in a while?
Normal. There's nothing that indicates that it was a daily thing. It was just I don't even want to use the word reoccurring. It was just there were times when Ray got frustrated, and the day he disappeared happened to be one of those times.
Can you go back just a little bit then? So they had the argument over the cat destroying something, and it got heated. They went into separate rooms, and when his son came out of the room, that's so in that window of time, that's when Ray left.
Correct.
And the door was open, like wide open.
The front door to the house was open. according to the statement Ray's son made to the Crowley detective.
And what's that window of time?
Hour, maybe?
Okay. And did Ray drive a vehicle?
No. There was only one vehicle, assigned to the household, and Ray's wife had the vehicle at the time. We believe he left. She was at work, so she had the vehicle, so there was no way for him to leave, via motor vehicle. We believe he left the house on foot. As I noted, Ray is not capable of getting around very well. He has rheumatoid arthritis in both his knees and has to take injections just to kind of manage the pain. So he didn't get around very well as far as walking.
What's the area like? Is this like a small community, or is this like lots of houses?
I would describe it as a moderate sized city. Crowley probably has a population of 15 to 20,000 people. So this was a neighborhood community that he left from, a pretty urban area.
And where did people see him along the way? There's very little on this disappearance out there. So apologies for like the highly
don't apologize at all. That's another reason I wanted to kind of come on with you guys, is because there is nothing. We really need to get the word out in case somebody has seen Ray, or perhaps Ray himself sees it. We are very concerned for Ray's well-being and safety, because we know that he could go into bouts of depression and even he had mentioned some suicidal ideations before in the past. And we know that he did leave the house with his handgun. We believe he left the house with his handgun. So there is some concern there. We don't know that for a fact that he was going to harm himself, but it is a concern. So, with no one hearing from Ray since that day, that's very concerning to us.
Okay, so he had mentioned suicide in the past?
Yes. As I said, he was a recovering alcoholic. There's some mention in the reports that, since he had recovered, his personality had changed a little bit. He became a little more reserved, so to speak. But when these arguments would happen, he could kind of not behave erratically, but go into a bit of a depression kind of thing. And so there's a concern that perhaps he left the house and harmed himself. Again, we don't know that for a fact, but that concern is there.
Had he left on foot from the house after an argument before?
We believe so, yes. The Crowley Police Department, they knocked on all his neighbors' doors, seeing if maybe anybody had seen him, anybody caught him on their Ring camera. Unfortunately, no one saw him, or, no cameras caught him leaving. So again, there's no confirmed sighting of him after he leaves that house.
But before that day, this kind of thing would happen, and he would go walking and return?
There's no reports of him leaving the house like this before, at least not that I saw.
And there was you said just one vehicle, and Ray's wife had the vehicle at the time?
Correct. There's no, based on his cell phone records, we can't find anywhere where he called anybody for a ride. None of his friends reported hearing from him on that day or after that day. So, we know he had some indication that he may have gone to the VA, the Veterans Assistance place. He had made a phone call to the VA at 1:30 in the morning, I believe, after he left. And he had, I believe, made the comment to someone about going to the VA to seek assistance. If he ever needed it, he could do that. The direction that we believe he was traveling after he left the house would seem to indicate that could have been where he was going. But we don't know that. After he left the house, we don't have any indication of what his destination could have been.
All right, we're going to take a quick break for commercial. And just a reminder, folks, that we will return at the end of this conversation with some final thoughts.
Thanks to our sponsors, and now we're back to the program. So you said he called the VA at 1:30 a.m., so that's about 12 hours after he was known to have been missing?
His cell phone made a call to the VA After he left the house, yes, at about 1:30 in the morning. Now, the detective in charge of Ray's case did contact the VA and see if Ray was there. I think there were some privacy laws, that came into play there. All they could do really was say, hey, look, we'll put his poster up, and if anybody sees him, or perhaps if he sees the poster, he'll contact you. So, but as far as we can tell, I think the detective was able to do a little more legwork, and he is reasonably confident that Ray did not make it to the VA. He's not there.
Was he ever diagnosed with PTSD?
I believe so. I believe there were some PTSD issues.
What about dementia or Alzheimer's?
There was some speculation that perhaps he did suffer from that, but I don't think there was ever confirmed diagnosis.
And no, like, ring cameras, like, nothing picked him up. Nothing picked up this. I mean, and you were talking about his arthritis in his knees. I think if, like, you were to see somebody walking in pain, like, they would stand out. So no one remembers anything like that.
Not anything confirmed that could be to Ray. There was one witness that did call the Crowley PD and describe a person in her neighborhood as walking very uneasily. But according to the detective, he was able to rule that out as being Ray. He is confident that was not Ray. So who that person was, we don't know. They're confident it wasn't Ray.
It sounded like you had some cell phone ping data. Were there other calls that were made, and do you have any information on where he was? Any cell phone ping information?
So according to his cell phone pings, it looks like he was traveling east along Highway 1187, which is directly, I mean, the street that he lives on would go into 1187, and 1187 is a pretty major roadway. There's some pings, along Highway 87 moving east, which that would take you towards the VA. That's in Dallas. It's a little bit of a trek, but that's why we think maybe that's where he was intending to go. We don't know that for a fact, but those pings in that direction of travel would have taken him towards the VA. So, the phone last made that, I believe the last call that was made was the 1:30 a.m. call to the VA. And then there's some data activity that occurs around the 3 a.m., 4 a.m. mark. And then the phone finally pings, I want to say around 5 a.m. the morning of the 29th. And that's the last ping. And that ping occurred 15 miles away from his house in the city of Mansfield.
What kind of phone did he have?
From what it was described to me, it was just an old flip style phone.
Gotcha. So there was no, like, location services that you can, like, find my phone or something?
No, none of that. Ray was known to not be very tech savvy.
Were there other calls that he placed before the one to the VA?
Not to my knowledge.
It was super early in the morning. Was there anybody there that answered?
Unknown. I don't know if anybody at the VA's hospital answered.
Okay, the gun, his gun. What did he have the gun for? Just general reasons. He was a veteran.
General, personal protection. But his sister and his wife made the comment that he was not typically known to carry it on him. He would have it there at the house, but he was not known to, like, put it on him and carry it out with him in public. That's why there's a little bit of concern that there may be some self-harm worry there.
Where would he go to do that? Like, we always hear stories like, they'll go out into the wilderness, or, they're like the side of a mountain or something. Is there anywhere locally that, within a few miles, that he would have done that without being discovered for so long?
There are a couple of reasonably wooded areas in the near vicinity of his home that I guess if you were going to do that, you could. But as I said, he seems to have passed all those areas and gotten 15 miles away into the city of Mansfield. Now, there are a couple of wooded areas near the last cell phone ping. Matter of fact, one of those areas was the areas I led a search in a few weeks ago. But again, it was determined pretty quickly based on the terrain of the property that Ray couldn't have gotten very far into it. We probably got a good 20 yards into the property, but with all the overgrowth and the vegetation and the terrain itself, and then a large creek being in the middle of the property, we determined that it wasn't very likely Ray could have gone very far in there and harmed himself, especially given his physical limitations.
So, do you think Ray made it on foot that far away from his house?
I don't know. It's so hard to say. I guess it would depend on how much pain he was in. Uh, I think his sister Donna said that he was scheduled to receive his next round of injections there, probably, I think it was within the next week. It's possible he got a ride to that area. We don't know. Hopefully, if somebody sees this and they did give Ray a ride that day, they will make contact with us. That, again, that's one reason I really wanted to do the podcast, was just get the word out about him. Hopefully, somebody's seen him. We can't rule out that maybe he's living among the homeless community somewhere. We can't rule that out. We just don't know. After that cell phone quit communicating on the morning of the 29th, we have no indication of where Ray could have gone, where he went, nothing. There's been no activity on any of his bank accounts. There's been no activity on his social. Crowley PD really did try their best to locate him. They called the hospitals, jails, anywhere they thought he could reasonably be, and no one had seen him.
What else did he have on his person when he left? Was there anything missing from the house, or?
In addition to the handgun, we know that he did have his wallet, which we believe contained about $50 to $60 worth of cash. I think his keys, his cell phone. He was wearing a ball cap that said Army veteran across the top. That's something that would make him stand out.
But no one went through his stuff after and realized something wasn't there, or nothing like that?
Not that we're aware of, no.
Okay, so these towns are kind of small. They are in the Dallas area, but Crowley is like 18,000 people. Mansfield looks pretty small as well, but yeah, 15, 20 miles to Dallas. Doesn't seem like too much like woods or anything like that either, unless I'm incorrect about that.
No, I mean, there's a couple of small wooded parcels of property, but other than that, I mean, there's not like a forest or, or a national park or anything like that in the area that somebody could trek into and whatever happened. Another concern we have is, I think it was 2 days later, a very significant winter weather storm hit the Dallas-Fort Worth area. So we're concerned that if he was out in that, could he have, succumbed to the lower temperatures? That's a possibility.
My God. So it's so tough trying to get information on this. Why has there been so little coverage, and why is there so little info out there?
I think I think there was like a small news bit. Can't remember if it was NBC5 or WFAA that ran the story, but yeah, it's just, a 66-year-old man, just, they don't get as much coverage as, I hate to bring up the whole missing white woman syndrome thing that gets talked about a lot, but this is one of the, you guys know how these cases work. Often it's young kids and missing white women that get a lot of the coverage, and that's unfortunate. But it does seem to be a thing, and I think it's up to private investigators and podcasters and anybody in the media to maybe help shift some of that, because I can tell you, Donna, Ray's sister, she's very much concerned about Ray and wants to find out what happened to him. And I mean, regardless of whatever Ray was going through at the time of his disappearance, he deserves to be searched for and found.
Was he well off? Was the family okay financially?
So there were some debt issues on Ray's part. I forget what the debt was. It wasn't like a crazy big amount. He was working with a company to help settle that, but I think something went by the wayside with that, and he quit making the payments. And I think the company did threaten legal action with him, but there's no indication that played a factor in his disappearance. Could it have added to his stresses that he was going through? That's certainly a possibility.
Now, just another question about the gun. Did anyone besides Ray have access to it? Like, I don't know if you have any intel on like where he kept it, and like, did other people know the combination or anything like that?
He was known to move it around and keep it in different areas of the house. I think the last area he had kept it in was the garage. And again, that weapon was not accounted for after Ray went missing. And Ray's wife, went through the garage pretty thoroughly in attempting to locate it, and she was unable to. That's what leads us to believe he had it with him because it was unaccounted for. He was really, I don't want to use the words he's the only one that had access to it, but he was the main one that would typically move it around.
Was the son's girlfriend at the house when this fight went down?
I believe so.
Gotcha. And she has the same report about being in the room, obviously, with the son, I take it.
Yes.
How long had they been together?
Few months, I think.
So it was a new relationship.
Fairly new, I believe.
So no one saw him get 15 miles away, at least that we know of.
Yeah, no one's come forward with anything that can be verified. And in order for him to, the part that really kind of strikes me is if Ray did in fact walk along Highway 1187, Highway 1187 goes right over Interstate 35, which is a very, very major interstate here in the area. It's one of the main interstates in the state. It connects the Waco area to the Dallas-Fort Worth area, so lots of cars. There's a pretty big gas station that he would have had to have walked by that people would be frequenting. But I do know there's a lot of homeless people that sometimes hang out there. So the fact that no one really paid attention if they saw somebody doesn't surprise me, because it's a pretty natural occurring thing. I mean, it happens all the time. I've gone through that little intersection there. It's not even intersection. It's basically you can exit off the highway and then 1187 goes across, and there's homeless people there all the time, like I said. So it doesn't surprise me that nothing stuck out to anybody.
Do you have any plans to visit these homeless communities?
So I know that Donna has on a couple of occasions. I think Detective White has done some things too. I do plan to make visits to most of the major, I guess, areas where homeless people frequent. I do have plans to do that at some point, just to see if anybody's seen Ray or has had any contact with him. That's on my to-do list. I do plan to look for some other areas that are worth searching, and I will execute searches of those areas if we feel they're valid areas to search.
Yeah, so I'm just looking on the map here. This 187 does look like a straight shot.
Yeah.
Yeah, to
1187
Mansfield.
goes
But
right to him.
1187?
Yeah, 1187.
Right, but there are no sidewalks.
No, he would have, unless he was walking in the grassy area next to the road or walking on the shoulder of the road itself.
I find it hard to believe that no one called in that amount of time. If he really walked 15, 20 miles, at whatever pace with arthritis, that might have taken him that whole 12 hours.
Or perhaps he did get a ride, yeah.
Perhaps he did, but yeah, if he was walking, I just find it hard to believe no one saw him or made a call or stopped to ask or remembers or anything like that.
Have you or any of the other investigators contacted Mansfield's police department or any of the other adjacent towns?
And Mansfield, when Crowley PD learned where the cell phone last pinged, they actually contacted Mansfield, and Mansfield PD searched, the areas they could legally access and search them, and there was no sign of Ray. I'll even take it a step further. The search I did a few weeks ago, there was a property across the street from the property we were searching, but it's owned by the city of Mansfield. And I contacted Mansfield to see, who I needed to contact to get permission to go on the property, what branch of the city government or whatever. And a couple of days later, a detective with Mansfield PD contacted me and said, I'm going to get a group of guys together and go check this field you were interested in. And they did. And again, no sign of Ray.
Now, it does look like the opposite direction, west, is a little bit more rural, gets a little bit more woodsy.
It does, yeah.
Obviously, you're obviously searching east because that's where the ping was, and and so the thing about that with his phone is the phone call was placed to the VA that he had some connection to, even though we don't know what happened, what transpired on that phone call, but he had some connection with that VA. So
I actually kind of went down that same thought process I think you're going down right now, is did somebody else find the phone and pick it up and then take it? I considered that. But when you have that, like you said, when you have that phone call to the VA, that leans you more towards Ray was with the phone, because I don't think a random stranger or even a dumb punk kid stealing a cell phone is going to call the VA.
Right, certainly not randomly. They wouldn't call a place that Ray had. I mean, I suppose it could have been in his phone, but yeah, highly likely that Ray made that call in my head.
Yeah. It's actually noted that Ray did not save his contacts into his phone because he was not tech savvy. I think he had the closest ones to him, kind of memorized by heart, that's how we all did it in the olden days, before cell phones were a thing. You just memorized your buddy's phone numbers, or you remember the books you'd write all your contacts down in. So that's really what leads me more towards Ray was with the phone the whole time.
And you said he's a recovering alcoholic. Was he going to meetings?
Well, like I said, he had gone to a treatment center in Florida and gone through their program and gotten himself cleaned up. As far as was he attending like AA meetings, there's no indication of that in the records. No one's mentioned any of that to me. So I think they help you kind of quit cold turkey, I guess, and get you to a point where you're mentally able to not pick it up anymore.
Yeah, my head was just going to like maybe he had a sponsor. Maybe the sponsor was someone at the VA or something.
Right.
What about any other friends nearby that he could maybe walk to, or even knows about? Any army buddies or any friends of his nearby?
Yeah, there are a couple of buddies of his that live in Burleson, which is right next to Crowley. Those guys were contacted by the detective at Crowley PD. None of them had heard from Ray in the time of his disappearance.
Man, so what do you do? Like, where do you go from here? Like, what's your next step?
You keep searching where you think possibly he could be, and then hope, perhaps by doing this podcast and just keep trying to get the word out, somebody will come forward and say, hey, I think I did see that old man. That's the best we can hope for.
Who should people contact if they've seen Ray or think that they've seen Ray?
The best thing to do would be to contact Crowley PD and speak to Detective White. He is the detective in charge of Ray's case with Crowley Police Department. They can contact me at jwatts@kgriff.com. That's my email. Those are the best avenues to use to get a hold of. You can always call Crime Stoppers, the Texas Department of Public Safety's Missing Persons Clearinghouse. We'll get those numbers. You guys post those numbers in the show notes. Those are the best avenues to get information about Ray across.
And do you have any plans to search?
I'm currently looking at a couple of areas that I think Ray could possibly be in that are east of the area of the last cell phone ping. Got to do a little more legwork, try to get a hold of some property owners, and then set a time to try and go search. I'm very blessed by the people. A lot of people that have searched with me on the Brandon Lawson case continue to assist me in searches, not only in Jason Landry, but in Ray's case. Made friends with a very, very good canine team, Team Texas Canines, led by Crystal Fields. She's an awesome canine handler. Her dogs are amazing. I try to utilize them every time I go out. There's a great group of people that are ready to go look for Ray if we get a spot picked out to go look for him.
Great. Anything else here you'd like to say about this case today?
If you hear or see this podcast and you think you may have seen a little old man walking around having trouble walking, Ray was last known to be wearing a navy blue zip-up jacket, blue jeans, tennis shoes, and an Army veteran ball cap. If he's still among us, he probably has changed clothes by now, but perhaps the Army veteran ball cap will stick out. Again, if you can think back to a few years and remember seeing an old man stumbling around January, February of 22, reach out. You never know when that could have been Ray.
Yeah, well, good luck. I mean, the work that you've done with Brandon Lawson and Jason Landry, like, it's admirable and such hard work, and you work with all the families, and you make sure that everybody's taken care of, including the people that help you search. So got another one here with this one, but I am struggling to try to put these pieces together, and there's just not a lot out there.
Yeah, that's what makes these cases so frustrating, man. When there's not enough information. In this one, there's not really a whole lot to kind of go on or continue on. You're literally kind of throwing darts at the wall, and it's very, very difficult. I am confident that if we are able to pass any information on to the detective in charge of Ray's case, he will go after it. He has emphatically stated that to me, several times. Hey, if you can give me something, I'll work it. Matter of fact, when I talked to him last week, he very much wants to find Ray. He's one of those detectives that I really think the cases that he works on mean something to him, and he really does have the heart. He wants to go after him. So if we can just get some indication of where Ray might be, I'll go after it, or he'll go after it.
Are you looking for other searchers for any future searches for Ray or anyone else?
Yeah, I mean, if somebody in the Dallas-Fort Worth area hears this and wants to be a part of a search that I may be doing locally, reach out to me, jwatts@kgriff.com. Again, if anybody has any information pertaining to the disappearance of Ray McDonald, you can email me at jwatts@kgriff.com, or you can contact the Crowley Police Department at 817-297-2276 and ask for Detective White.
Okay, and we're back here for final thoughts after the interview with Jason Watts. Boy, Jason doesn't disappoint when he comes on the airwaves, Lance. He's very thorough in his searches, and we really appreciate him bringing us these cases, especially lesser-known ones like Morris Ray McDonald's. I'm nothing makes me happier, honestly, as host of this show than putting out information that I can't really find online.
Yeah, you're right. In the intro, you said that Jason was mentioning things that you can't find online, which is showing that he's doing a good job hitting the pavement out there, asking questions and trying to get as much info for Ray as he possibly can. And the way this came to Jason was interesting too, where he says that he was just grabbing lunch at a local place and saw the poster, and that's the purpose of these posters, right? To have the right person see it at the right time. I think, the level of, humility or pride that comes with that, knowing that Jason Watts ended up seeing the poster all the way in Texas, his hometown in Texas, where he lives and works, and then contacts us, and we're able to put Ray's story out there, I think is one of the more fulfilling things that comes with doing this job here, talking about these missing persons, even when you have such little information. So hopefully this will help to bring more information to Jason's attention so he can start putting some pieces together.
Right. This conversation was really interesting in that a lot of these typical sources that we use, like, the NamUs website or the Charlie Project or some other places like that. But this one didn't have too many reports of specific details, like the gun. Like, Morris Ray McDonald went missing and his gun was unaccounted for after that. Like, that is a pretty startling, fact. And that could be the headline of, many articles about him. If the circumstances were different, they would have been, So it's kind of amazing to me that, like, the typical outlets don't have some of that information, and Jason does. So I'm really glad that we kind of ran down that information as much as we could, as far as asking Jason follow-ups to that. Is Ray the only one who can come in contact with the gun, or do other people maybe have it too? Things like the argument, because we've done this long enough where we know how the speculation wheel gets churning. If we didn't know there was another person at the house when that argument occurred and Ray's son went into the bedroom and then Ray went missing, there would be much more question about that.
100%. And I don't know what to attribute that to. The lack of media coverage on a detail like that is, like, kind of unanswerable in my head. I'm not sure why, even in a small Texas town, I mean, not saying anything about small towns, but you still have news, you still cover news events, and that is newsworthy. Someone who's missing should be newsworthy. Someone who's missing with their own weapon, with a gun, their own gun, is even more. That should have been like a bonus to the story. Maybe it's out there somewhere and we're just not seeing it. I don't know, but if we've sifted through all of the limited information that's out there, it's probably not there. I just am disappointed in the fact that I think Jason was right when he said this is pretty much an elderly man who was not exactly healthy. He had arthritis in his knees, so again, like, this shouldn't matter, but he probably can't get very far by walking due to arthritis in his knees. Is it just not sexy enough of a story?
Yeah, that's kind of what I was going to get at, was that, he's an older guy, and, a lot of these stories really kind of fly when you're talking about, like, social media and things like that, when they're young, typically white, and typically women. Male victims have, especially missing persons, have less of a time getting out there in the social sphere. It happens. There's Brandon Lawson, there's Brian Schaefer, and some other ones, and he's older. So there's those two things, and I think it just speaks to people thinking they probably know where the story's going. As far as him using that gun on himself is my guess, and maybe the story is a little depressing for people. I don't know. But one thing I would say is it's not without mystery. Obviously, you have the mystery of where he is and where he could have gotten. But I just don't understand how he or his phone ended up so far away and nobody reported seeing him. Like, you can look on Google Maps, put yourself on those roads, and, like, there's no sidewalk. Like, walking 15 miles without a sidewalk is definitely something to cause attention to yourself, if not, become a victim of a vehicular accident, or even just, like, a cop passes by and slows down and asks, makes sure you're all right or whatnot.
Yeah, it's really remarkable that there were no sightings, and in my head, it's almost impossible for someone with his condition to make it that far on foot.
Yeah, I mean, like, playing it out in my head a little bit, it really would have taken, like, all day. Would have taken, like, I don't know, 10, 12 hours.
Easily.
Maybe somewhere in it's about 15 miles away.
Yeah. Yeah. And probably there are areas where you're walking, like, on a on-ramp, right? For, like, a highway.
It's almost more like farm roads that are 2 lanes each side.
Yeah, okay.
And they're with no sidewalk. Residences on the side, certainly some businesses.
It's impossible for me to think that there's no ring camera. Investigators didn't follow that route and ask everybody if they saw anything on a ring camera. I don't know. I think there's something else that might have happened in that house.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad we asked those questions. It sounds like for Jason, that is not the direction he's going right now. Not to say there couldn't be twists, but I'm definitely curious how that all went down.
I'm super curious as well. I've gotten into arguments with family members, friends, things like that, roommates, and there have been moments where you just have to go into another room and chill out. Coming back out and seeing the door open, right? The door's open and the person that you were having the argument with is gone. It's like there's so many things that suggest possibilities. The argument was so bad that Ray had to take himself out of the house. The argument wasn't that bad, but Ray interpreted it as being so bad he had to leave, which would indicate that he is having some sort of emotional moment where he's perceiving things differently. He is a recovering alcoholic, not saying he's relapsed or anything like that, but he could have had thoughts of relapsing, and he needed to distract himself, and he needed to leave. That's one thing that kind of stuck with me, was he was involved with the VA. He had just gone to a facility to help him with his alcoholism. I don't know what that program was that Jason was talking about, but
Yeah, he mentioned it was in Florida.
It was in Florida, but I can't imagine that it was only for the physical addiction. If you're going to a program, maybe it's not AA, but they have to address the physical addiction and also your emotional thresholds. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You want to talk to somebody. If he doesn't want to drink, there had to have been a contact there. That's why I think maybe that call was made to the VA, that maybe he was having a moment where he was about to fall off the wagon, but no one from the VA has come back and said, he talked to me. Maybe it's like a confidentiality thing.
I think that's what Jason mentioned. Yeah, I think we've run into things like this before with HIPAA privacy laws. And I think that's exactly what it is.
Yeah, but they would probably have to say it to law enforcement.
Yeah, I think HIPAA is pretty serious with what they protect. I want to say they even protect some information from law enforcement unless there's a warrant or something. So I don't know, but yeah, so that's a good tree you're barking up as far as maybe someone can get an answer from what that call entailed.
Mm-hmm.
But I think if I'm not mistaken, it was around 1:30 in the morning.
Yeah, it was 1:30 in the morning. I don't know who's at the VA at that time.
Yeah, he might have been already off the wagon if he's calling at 1:30 in the morning,
or lost.
Yeah,
wandering somewhere, but no one has seen him on a Ring camera. So the other scenario that's going through my head is he never left the house. And I don't want to point fingers, but that's just the other scenario that's running through my head.
Yeah, really interesting stuff. I don't know what to make of it. It makes me wonder if maybe there was potentially some dementia or Alzheimer's, that ended up getting mixed up. But again, it's almost coincidental if it happens right after an argument or something like that. But I know that those kinds of issues will cause some problems that you don't even we can't rationalize.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. Sad story. I hope there's some movement. I hope that we have Jason come back on and talk about developments.
Well, yeah, thanks a lot for listening, everybody. We really appreciate it. And if you've got any information on Morris Ray McDonald, please call the Crowley, Texas Police Department at 817-297-2276.
Thanks a lot for joining us on these final thoughts. Till next time? Is that a good way to end it?
It's not bad.